My daughter-in-law ripped my late wife's wedding portrait off the wall and smashed it on the floor right in front of me. She's dead, Harold. Dead people don't need houses. Living people do. Glass shattered across the hardwood my wife and I had laid with our own hands 40 years ago. My son Ryan just stood there, pale as a ghost, and whispered, "She's right, Dad. You need to let go." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and made one quiet call. By midnight, their luxury Gold Coast apartment had new locks. Their credit cards were frozen, and they were standing in the Chicago cold with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They thought I was a broke, retired architect living on a pension. They had no idea who I really was. Before I continue this story, I'm glad you're here. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you believe that respect for your elders is something that should never be negotiated. And let me know in the comments what city you are watching from. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of that night. The night everything changed. The air in my kitchen was thick with the warm, rich scent of roasting lamb and rosemary. It was New Year's Eve, a night meant for celebration, for looking back with gratitude and forward with hope. But the only thing I felt that evening was the familiar cold weight of tension creeping in from the living room like a draft under a closed door. My name is Harold Mercer. I am 72 years old, and this 5-story Victorian house in Lincoln Park, Chicago, has been my home for 4 decades. My late wife Maggie and I bought it when we were barely 30, back when this neighborhood was just a quiet stretch of old trees and working families, long before the craft cocktail bars and the $3 million renovations moved in. We poured our youth into these walls. We sanded these oak floors by hand on our knees until our backs screamed. We painted every room ourselves, arguing over colors, laughing over mistakes. Maggie wanted the kitchen yellow. I wanted white. She won. She always won. The kitchen is still yellow. Through the doorway, I could hear them whispering. My son Ryan and his wife, Vanessa. Their voices were low, but Vanessa's had a particular edge to it, a sharpness that cut through the soft jazz I had playing on the old turntable. "It's absurd, Ryan. 5 floors. 5. And he's one man. One old man rattling around in this place like a ghost. My parents need somewhere to live. This is the obvious solution." I paused, the carving knife hovering over the lamb. 5 floors. This house. My home. The home where Maggie and I raised our son. The home where she painted her watercolors in the garden-level studio until the cancer took her hands first, then her strength, then everything. That was 8 years ago. 8 years, and I still couldn't walk past that studio without hearing the soft scratch of her brush on canvas. Now Vanessa just saw square footage. She saw a real estate listing. She saw an asset waiting to be seized. And Ryan. My Ryan. He just saw whatever she told him to see. They both looked at me and saw Harold Mercer, the 72-year-old retired architect living a quiet, modest life on a pension that barely covered the property taxes. A kind old man. A simple old man. A man whose best years were behind him. That was the man I had allowed them to see. It was safer that way. Maggie, God rest her beautiful soul, always said it best. She told me once, sitting right there in that yellow kitchen, stirring her tea with that faraway look she got when she was thinking something important. "Be careful, Harold," she said. "Money does something strange to people. It doesn't change them. It reveals them. And the ones you need to watch the closest are not the strangers. They're the ones who already have a key to your front door." She was right. She was always right. I just wished I had listened sooner. The whispers stopped. A moment later, footsteps. The deliberate click of expensive heels on my hardwood floor. Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was not dressed for a family dinner. She was dressed for a closing argument. A sharp, tailored black dress that I knew for a fact my son could not afford on his project manager salary. Diamond studs in her ears that she claimed were cubic zirconia. They were not cubic zirconia. Harold, she said. She had never once called me Dad. Not in 6 years of marriage to my son. Not once. I'm glad you're not busy. I turned slowly from the counter, the carving knife still in my hand. I'm preparing a New Year's Eve dinner, Vanessa. I am, by definition, busy. She waved a perfectly manicured hand. A gesture I had seen 100 times. A gesture of pure, practiced dismissal. The wave of a woman who believed the world existed to accommodate her schedule. Fine. I'll be quick. She straightened her posture, lifted her chin. I've made a decision. My parents will be moving into the garden-level apartment at the end of January. They need a place. And frankly, it's sitting there empty, collecting dust. It's the practical thing to do. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was a corporate memo delivered to a subordinate. The sheer audacity of it hung in the air between us, thicker than the aroma of the roasting lamb. I set the carving knife down carefully on the cutting board. I wiped my hands slowly on my old apron, the one with the faded stain from a Christmas roast 6 years ago. The last one Maggie ever cooked. No, Vanessa. She blinked. Just once. A single, almost imperceptible flicker of surprise. Like a cat that had just been flicked on the nose. What did you say? I said no. That will not be happening. I kept my voice low. Measured. The way you speak to someone who has mistaken your patience for weakness. That apartment was Maggie's studio. It is my office now. It is not available. Her carefully composed face began to crack. Not all at once. It was slow, like watching a hairline fracture spread across porcelain. First, the jaw tightened. Then, the nostrils flared. Then the eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, began to burn. Why not? She said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Because of her? She's gone, Harold. She has been gone for 8 years. You are one elderly man living alone in a 5-story house while my parents are about to lose their lease. How selfish can you possibly be? Selfish. There it was. The word she had been sharpening all evening, waiting for the right moment to drive it in. Ryan appeared in the doorway right on cue, wringing his hands in that familiar posture of a man who had surrendered the steering wheel of his own life long ago. He was 36 years old. But in moments like this, he looked 12. Dad, come on. Please. They have nowhere else to go. We can't afford the deposit on a new place for them. You have all this space. It just makes sense. I looked at my son. My only child. The boy whose first word was moon because Maggie used to hold him up to the window every night and point at the sky. Ryan, I said, my voice still quiet. I helped you with the deposit on your current apartment. And the one before that. I co-signed the loan for that car you are driving, the one you defaulted on twice. I paid your college tuition in full. I have never once asked for any of it back. I let each fact land like a stone dropped into still water. The answer is no. This was the moment Vanessa realized her usual tactics had failed. Negotiation, charm, guilt, all crashed and burned against a single word. Her face flushed a dark, mottled red. Her manicured hands curled into fists. The polished, sophisticated woman who had walked into my kitchen 3 minutes ago was gone. In her place stood something raw and honest, something she usually kept hidden behind designer clothes and practiced smiles. Selfish, she hissed. You are the most selfish man I have ever met. She spun on her heel. But she did not walk toward the door. She walked toward the living room, toward the fireplace, toward Maggie's wedding portrait on the wall. It was a beautiful photograph, black and white, taken on the steps of Holy Name Cathedral in June of 1984. Maggie was laughing in it. Not posing. Laughing. Her head thrown back, her veil caught in the wind, and I was looking at her like she was the only person on the planet. The sound came before I understood what was happening. A sharp, violent scrape of the frame against the wall. Then a crash that shook the bones of the house. Vanessa had ripped the portrait off the wall and hurled it onto the hardwood floor. Glass shattered on impact, jagged fragments skittering across the oak planks that Maggie and I had sanded together 40 years ago. "She's dead, Harold." Vanessa's voice was raw, cracking, almost inhuman. She stood over the broken frame, breathing hard. "Dead people don't need houses. Living people do." The silence was absolute. The jazz record had ended. The only sound was the faint hiss of the needle spinning in the empty groove and the distant pop of early fireworks. Somewhere in Chicago, people were counting down to midnight. In my kitchen, a family was ending. I looked at the portrait on the floor. Maggie's face smiled up at me through cracked glass, still laughing, still beautiful. Then I looked at Ryan. This was the moment of truth. My son, my blood. The moment for him to step forward, to draw a line that could never be uncrossed. His face was pale, but not with outrage for me, not with horror at what his wife had done to his mother's memory. It was pale with embarrassment. I had become an inconvenience. "She's right, Dad," he said quietly. "You need to let go. Mom is gone. This place is too much for you. If you can't support us, then maybe we need to rethink everything." And in that moment, standing in my yellow kitchen with my dead wife's shattered portrait at my feet and my son's rejection ringing in my ears, I felt nothing. Not pain, not shock, just clarity. The fog I had been living in for 8 years. The fog of misplaced hope and one-sided sacrifice lifted completely. And what I saw underneath was the truth. I did not tremble. I did not raise my voice. I smiled. A small, tired, and utterly final smile. I untied the old apron, the one with the stain from Maggie's last Christmas roast. I folded it carefully and placed it on the counter. Then I reached into my pocket. Not the pocket with the old flip phone they knew. The other pocket, the one with the phone they did not know existed. They had expected tears. They had expected surrender. They were not prepared for calm. "What are you doing?" Vanessa snapped. I pressed a single number on my favorites list and held the phone to my ear. "Diana," I said, my voice perfectly level. "It's Harold. Happy New Year, sister." A pause. Ryan's brow furrowed. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Yes, everything is exactly as you said it would be. Activate the plan. Activate everything." Vanessa went white. "Plan? What plan? Who is Diana?" I did not answer. I knelt down, picked up Maggie's broken portrait, and brushed a sliver of glass from her laughing face. I would have it restored. Every crack, every scratch. I would bring her back. Then I stood and pointed to the front door. "The dinner is over. Leave my house." "Dad, you can't kick us out." "It's New Year's Eve." "You kicked yourself out, Ryan," I said, my voice as cold as the January pavement outside. "You made your choice. As a stranger, I am asking you to leave my property." They stormed out. The heavy oak door slammed so hard the chandelier trembled, and the last shard of glass fell from Maggie's frame with a tiny, almost musical clink. Outside, fireworks erupted across the Chicago skyline. Gold and silver against the black winter sky. The new year had arrived. I sat down in Maggie's old armchair by the fireplace, the one that still smelled faintly of her lavender perfume. I placed her broken portrait on my lap. "Phase 1 is complete," I whispered. And then, right on schedule, my phone began to ring. Ryan's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring. The phone rang 15 minutes after they left. I let it ring 4 times, savoring each one like the last notes of a symphony. When I finally answered, the sound that came through the speaker was not my son's voice. It was a scream. "Dad!" It was raw, torn from his throat, vibrating with pure, unadulterated panic. "Dad, what did you do?" I held the phone slightly away from my ear. In the background, I could hear Vanessa. She was hyperventilating, her breath coming in sharp, ragged bursts that sounded like something between sobbing and choking. "Ryan," I said, injecting the perfect amount of elderly confusion into my voice. "What on earth are you shouting about? And why are you calling me Dad? I thought by your own request that I needed to let go." "Stop it! Just stop it!" he shrieked. "This isn't a joke. This isn't funny. We just got an email. An official legal email. We're being evicted, Dad. Our lease is terminated, effective immediately. We have 24 hours to vacate the premises." 24 hours? It's New Year's Eve. Where are we supposed to go? "Evicted," I repeated slowly, as if tasting something unfamiliar. "My goodness. That's terrible. But what does that have to do with me?" "It's from some corporation," he shouted, his voice cracking like ice under pressure. "A management company. Mercer Holdings. You must have called them. You must have told them some lie about us." I let the silence stretch. I let it fill with his panic, with Vanessa's muffled sobbing, with the distant sound of fireworks still popping over the lake. "Mercer Holdings," I said, rolling the name across my tongue as though it were a foreign word I had never encountered. "No, son. I am afraid I have never heard of them. It sounds like you have a problem with your landlord. I am very sorry to hear about your troubles." "Sorry?" He was sputtering, choking on his own rage and fear. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? This is your sick revenge because Vanessa asked for that apartment. I am simply sitting in my living room, Ryan, cleaning up the remains of a New Year's Eve dinner that was so rudely interrupted." I kept my voice calm, almost gentle. "What you and your wife are experiencing sounds like a legal matter between a tenant and a property management company. I don't see how a retired architect on a pension fits into it." There was a muffled sound, a struggle for the phone. Then Vanessa's voice came through, and it was a voice I had never heard her use before. The arrogant shriek from my kitchen was gone. In its place was something syrupy, desperate, and utterly fake. "Harold, please." A manufactured tremor. "I'm sorry. I was upset. I didn't mean what I said about Margaret. You know I loved her. Please, you can't let this happen to us. We can talk about the garden apartment. Maybe I was too hasty. Maybe we can find another solution." "So the garden apartment is back on the table," I said quietly. "Is that right, Vanessa? You'll let me keep my own home in exchange for you keeping yours?" "Yes. Yes, anything. Just stop this. I'm afraid I can't stop something I didn't start," I said. "I have never heard of Mercer Holdings. I suggest you contact them directly. Good night, Vanessa." I disconnected the call. The silence that filled my living room was immediate and deeply satisfying. I picked up my tea, took a slow sip, and dialed a different number. A number my son did not even know existed. Diana answered on the first ring. "Well?" "The Mercer Holdings name was inspired," I said, allowing a small, tired smile. Maggie would have appreciated the subtlety. My sister chuckled on the other end. "I thought you'd like it." "So, phase 1 is complete. They're panicking? He genuinely believes his landlord is a stranger." "Of course he does," Diana said, her tone shifting from amusement to the sharp, precise voice of the woman who had managed our shared empire for 2 decades. "That apartment building on the Gold Coast is one of the best assets we acquired 12 years ago. 28 units. Full occupancy. Lakefront views. Your son has been living in the penthouse paying $2,500 a month. The market rate for that unit is $8,000. I sighed, looking at Maggie's broken portrait resting against the armchair. "He called me selfish, Diana." "He doesn't know the meaning of the word," she replied, her voice hard. "He has been living on your invisible charity for his entire adult life. Every deposit, every lease, every credit approval, all of it financed by your silence. He just never bothered to ask how a retired architect's son could afford a Gold Coast penthouse on a project manager's salary." She was right. That apartment was the crown jewel of a financial safety net I had been quietly constructing around my son since the day he graduated college. He thought the building was owned by a faceless corporation. He thought his low rent was because of a long-term lease agreement his real estate agent had negotiated. He thought the doorman called him Mr. Mercer, out of professional courtesy. He had no idea the doorman called him that because I owned the building. It had started small. A co-signed lease here. A guaranteed deposit there. A quiet phone call to the property manager when Ryan was late on rent for the third time. Then Vanessa entered the picture, and the costs escalated. Suddenly they needed a bigger apartment. Suddenly they needed a parking space. Suddenly Vanessa needed a home office with a lake view. Each time, I made the call. Each time, I absorbed the difference. Each time, I said nothing. Maggie would have told me I was enabling him. She would have been right about that, too. Phase 1 is done, I told Diana. Now, the credit cards. Already in motion, Harold. By midnight, they will be financially invisible. Every card, every line of credit, all of it traced back to your guarantee. All of it revoked. I nodded slowly, staring at the dark window, where fireworks were still painting the sky in fading streaks of gold. How long before she does something stupid? Diana's answer was immediate. Not long. She's predictable, Harold. Desperate people always are. The question isn't whether she will escalate. The question is how far she is willing to go. I already knew the answer to that. I had seen it in her eyes when she smashed Maggie's portrait. There was no floor beneath Vanessa. No line she would not cross. No depth she would not reach if she believed there was something valuable at the bottom. She'll go all the way, I said quietly. Then we'll be ready. Diana replied. Good night, brother. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Diana. I hung up the phone. Outside, the last of the fireworks faded into smoke and silence. The new year stretched ahead, cold and dark and full of consequences. I looked down at Maggie's shattered portrait in my lap. Her laughing face, fractured but still beautiful behind the web of broken glass. Happy New Year, my love, I whispered. It's going to be a long one. I did not have to wait long. The phone rang again just before 1 a.m. I had been sitting in Maggie's armchair, watching the last traces of firework smoke dissolve into the black sky over Lincoln Park. My tea was still warm. The house was perfectly quiet. It was the kind of silence that felt like medicine. Dad, don't hang up. Please, don't hang up. Ryan's voice had changed. The anger was gone. The outrage was gone. What remained was something thinner, more fragile. The voice of a man standing on the edge of a cliff and looking down. What is it now, Ryan? The credit cards. His breath was shaking. They're not working. None of them. I tried to book a hotel room, and it was declined. The Amex, the Visa, even the debit card. Everything. All at the same time, Dad. All of them. Just stopped. In the background, I could hear Vanessa. She was no longer sobbing. She was pacing. I could hear the rapid click of her heels on a hard floor. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like a metronome, counting down to something inevitable. Blocked, I said, injecting mild grandfatherly confusion into my voice. My goodness. That does sound alarming. Have you called your bank? Perhaps there's been some kind of fraud alert. It's not fraud, he shouted. It happened at the exact same time as the eviction. The exact same time. You did this. I don't know how, but you did this. Ryan, I am a 72-year-old retired architect, I said, my voice gentle, patient, almost pitying. I barely know how to use the television remote. How could I possibly have anything to do with your credit cards? I think you are upset, son. It has been a very difficult evening. Perhaps you should get some rest and call your bank in the morning. Rest? His voice cracked. We're sitting in the car, Dad. In the parking lot of a Holiday Inn that just declined our card. It's 12 degrees outside. We have nowhere to go. I let the silence sit between us for a long moment. 12 degrees. My son was sitting in a cold car in a Holiday Inn parking lot on New Year's Eve. Because every financial lifeline he had ever known had been quietly, simultaneously severed. I knew all about those credit cards. I knew about the Platinum Amex that Vanessa used for her weekend trips to the spa in Lake Geneva. I knew about the Visa signature that Ryan used for whatever Vanessa told him to buy. I knew about the Nordstrom charge card that carried an obscene rolling balance of designer clothes and handbags that Vanessa insisted were investments in her personal brand. Vanessa, with her flawless confidence and her master's degree from a middle-tier business school, truly believed she had earned those high-limit cards. She bragged to her friends about her credit score. She posted about financial literacy on her social media. She genuinely thought that the $120,000 combined credit limit was a reflection of her own financial brilliance. She had no idea that limit was a reflection of my assets. It had started years ago. When Ryan was just out of college, he wanted to build his credit, a reasonable goal. So I co-signed his first credit card, a simple, fatherly gesture, a $5,000 limit, backed by my personal guarantee. He was grateful. He was responsible. For a while, then he met Vanessa. They wanted a joint card, a prestige card for their honeymoon, the kind with the heavy metal weight and the concierge service. The bank looked at their combined income, a project manager and a junior marketing coordinator, and politely suggested a more modest option. So I made a quiet call. I did not co-sign this time. I simply placed my name on a guarantor form that they never saw. I provided a financial statement that would have made their loan officer's eyes water. With every congratulations, you've been pre-approved for a limit increase email they received, they celebrated their own success. They toasted their financial savvy with champagne they charged to the very card I was secretly underwriting. Every swipe, every purchase, every treat-yourself moment was built not on their income, not on their credit history, but on my invisible, silent guarantee. They thought they were flying on their own wings. They never once looked up to see who was holding the kite string. And tonight, in one quiet phone call to Diana, I had simply let go. Ryan, I said, bringing myself back to the present. I truly am sorry you are having difficulties. But I am an old man on a fixed income. I don't have connections to banks or credit card companies. What you are describing sounds like a technical issue. I'm sure it will be resolved by morning. You're lying. His voice was hollow now, drained of energy. I know you're lying. I suggest you get some rest, son. Things always look clearer in the morning. Good night. I hung up. I placed the phone on the side table and leaned my head back against the worn velvet of Maggie's chair. I closed my eyes. For the first time since she died, the house felt peaceful. Not empty. Peaceful. There is a difference. An empty house echoes with absence. A peaceful house hums with quiet intention. Tonight, my house hummed. I thought about Ryan sitting in that freezing parking lot. I thought about Vanessa beside him, her mind already spinning, already calculating, already searching for her next angle of attack. I knew her. I had studied her for 6 years with the patient, clinical attention of an architect examining a flawed blueprint. I knew every load-bearing wall in her personality. And I knew exactly which ones would crack under pressure. She would not surrender. That was not in her nature. A woman like Vanessa did not accept defeat. She reframed it. She repackaged it. She turned victimhood into a weapon and desperation into strategy. She would escalate. The only question was how far. I already knew the answer. I had seen it in the way she stood over Maggie's broken portrait, glass crunching under her heels, without a flicker of remorse. There was no floor beneath Vanessa, no boundary she recognized, no line she would not cross if she believed there was profit on the other side. Diana had warned me. She's not just greedy, Harold. My sister had told me 6 months ago, when we first began planning for this possibility. Greed has limits. Greed can be satisfied. What Vanessa has is hunger. And hunger never stops. I opened my eyes and looked at the dark ceiling of my living room. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded. The city was settling into the first, "She'll try the law next," I murmured to the empty room. "She'll try to use the system. And when that fails, she'll try to break it." I picked up Maggie's portrait from my lap, carried it gently to the bookshelf, and propped it up where the firelight could reach her face. "Good night, Maggie," I whispered. "Tomorrow is going to be a very long day." I turned off the lamp and climbed the stairs to bed. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. And somewhere in a frozen parking lot on the north side, the woman who had smashed my wife's portrait was already planning her next move. I was counting on it. The banging started just after 2 in the morning. It was not a knock. It was the frantic, desperate pounding of fists against solid oak, a sound that shook the door in its frame and echoed up through all 5 floors of my house like a heartbeat gone wrong. I was not surprised. I had been lying in bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for exactly this. People like Vanessa do not sit in frozen parking lots for long. They pace. They plan. They convince themselves that the direct approach will work if they just push hard enough. It is the fatal flaw of every bully. They cannot fathom that their target might be stronger than they are. I walked calmly down the stairs, tea in hand, and pressed the button for the intercom. The small black and white video feed flickered to life on the screen by the front door. There they were, illuminated in the harsh white glare of the porch light, surrounded by a swirl of fine snow. Ryan was vibrating with cold and panic, his hair wild, his coat too thin for a Chicago winter night. He looked like he had aged 5 years in 5 hours. Vanessa stood beside him, and the transformation in her was remarkable. The desperate, sobbing woman from the phone call was gone. In her place stood something harder, something colder. Her expensive coat was pulled tight around her body, her jaw was set, and her eyes burned with a dark, calculating fury that I recognized immediately. She had stopped panicking. She had started strategizing. That made her far more dangerous. "Who is it?" I asked through the speaker, my voice calm, slightly groggy, as though I had been roused from sleep. "It's the middle of the night. Dad, open the door. Please, open the door." Ryan's voice was high, cracking with cold and desperation. "Ryan, what's wrong now? You'll wake the entire neighborhood." Vanessa shoved him aside. Her face filled the camera, close enough that I could see the mascara streaked beneath her eyes and the vein pulsing at her temple. "Open this door right now, Harold. We know you did this. The apartment, the credit cards, all of it. You're playing games with us. And it stops tonight." I took a slow sip of my chamomile tea. "Vanessa, I told you. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a retired architect. I went to bed 2 hours ago. Perhaps you should try calling your bank in the morning." "Stop it!" she screamed, her composure cracking for just a moment before she pulled it back together. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped. Low, controlled, venomous. It was the voice of a woman who had spent the last hour in a freezing car, rehearsing exactly what she was about to say. "Listen to me very carefully, Harold. I know what you're doing, and I know how to stop it." "I'm listening, Vanessa. You're 72 years old," she began. And I could hear her savoring each word, laying them down like bricks in a wall she was building around me. "You live alone. You're confused. You exhibit erratic, paranoid behavior. You hoard things. You talk to yourself. You threw your own family out of your house on New Year's Eve for no rational reason. Is that so?" "That is exactly so." Her voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper. "I've done my research, Harold. I know how this works. We are going to petition the court for emergency guardianship. We will bring in doctors. We will have you psychologically evaluated. We will prove to a judge that you are mentally incompetent, that you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs. Ryan's voice came faintly from behind her. Vanessa, maybe that's going too far. Shut up, Ryan. She didn't even turn around. This is the only way. He forced our hand. She leaned closer to the camera. I could see every line of triumph etched into her face. And when we get that guardianship, Harold, the very first thing we are going to do is approve my parents' application for the garden apartment. And the second thing we are going to do is sell this ridiculous, oversized museum and move you into a lovely little room in a nursing home. A good one, of course. We're not monsters. She paused, letting her words settle like poison into still water. We will get this house, Harold. One way or another. Whether you hand it over willingly or the court does it for you, this house will be ours. I let the silence hold for 10 full seconds. I could hear her breathing through the speaker, hard and fast, riding the high of her own speech. I could hear Ryan shuffling his feet in the snow behind her, saying nothing. Then I spoke. Are you finished, Vanessa? The question caught her off guard. What? Are you finished with your plan? My voice was no longer sleepy. It was clear, level, and cold. You think I'm joking? Just watch me, old man. I'm calling a lawyer first thing in the morning. We'll have you evaluated by the end of the week. Good, I said. Please do. And Vanessa? What? She spat. I hope you know that this call, like all calls to my personal line, is being recorded. Silence. Your lawyer will probably find that very interesting. I continued, my voice as calm as still water. Specifically, the part where you openly described your plan to manufacture evidence of mental incompetence in order to seize control of my assets. I believe the legal term for that is conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. In the state of Illinois, that carries a sentence of up to 7 years. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening, beautiful. I heard a small, strangled sound from the speaker, like a gasp being swallowed whole. You wouldn't, she whispered. I just did, I said. Thank you for providing such clear and detailed evidence of your intentions. It will be invaluable. Now, do not knock on this door again. You will be hearing from my legal representative. Good night, Ryan. I pressed the button, and the speaker went silent. I watched them on the small screen for another moment. Vanessa was frozen, her mouth open, her hand still raised toward the intercom. Ryan had slumped against the iron railing, his head bowed, snow collecting on his shoulders. Neither of them moved. I turned off the monitor and walked back to the kitchen to refill my tea. Then I picked up my phone and dialed Diana. She answered before the first ring finished. She took the bait, I said. Every word of it. Guardianship, nursing home, selling the house, all on tape. Exactly as predicted, Diana said. And now she's out of legal options for intimidation. She'll pivot. She'll try the system next. APS, I said. She'll call Adult Protective Services. She'll report me as a vulnerable adult being neglected. She'll try to get someone official on record saying I'm incompetent. My contact at the county office says they have to investigate every complaint, no matter how frivolous. She'll get a visit, Harold. Are you ready for it? I've been ready for months. Good. Diana paused. And Harold, there's something else. The audit on that startup Ryan mentioned last year. The one you funded. It came back. My hand tightened around the phone. How bad? Worse than we thought. Much worse. The company never existed, Harold. It was a shell. And the money is gone. All $150,000. I'll have the full report couriered to you in the morning. I closed my eyes. $150,000. The money I had given my son as a test of character. Gone. Get some rest, Diana, I said quietly. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. Tomorrow is going to be the day we finish this, she replied. Good night, brother. I hung up the phone. I stood alone in my quiet kitchen, the yellow walls glowing softly in the lamplight. Maggie's broken portrait watched me from the bookshelf, her laughing face split by a crack that ran right through her smile. She's exactly who you said she was, Maggie, I whispered. And now I have to prove it. The doorbell rang at precisely 2:15 the following afternoon. Not the frantic pounding of the night before. A sharp, official ring. 2 clean bursts that echoed through the quiet house with the authority of a summons. I had been expecting it. I had spent the entire morning preparing. I looked down at myself one final time. The stained bathrobe Maggie had always threatened to throw away. 3 days of stubble. Reading glasses pushed crookedly onto my forehead. On the kitchen counter sat an unwashed mug and a plate of half-eaten toast. On the living room floor, old newspapers I had scattered deliberately, and near the fireplace, a few shards of glass from Maggie's shattered portrait still glinted on the hardwood, exactly where they had fallen on New Year's Eve. The stage was set. The audience was at the door. I shuffled to the intercom with slow, unsteady steps. Yes? Who is it? Mr. Harold Mercer? My name is Miss Rivera. I'm a social investigator from Adult Protective Services. We've received a formal complaint regarding your welfare and your ability to care for yourself. May I please come in? Adult Protective Services. Vanessa had weaponized the system in less than 12 hours. I had to admire her efficiency. I buzzed her in and shuffled to the door, pulling the bathrobe tighter, making sure my hands trembled as I turned the lock. Miss Rivera stepped into my foyer. Early 40s. Sensible blue pantsuit. Clipboard. Laminated badge. A kind, tired face. The face of someone who had seen too many sad stories. Her eyes swept the room with practiced assessment. The dusty furniture, the newspapers, the unwashed mug, the cracked glass near the fireplace. May I sit down, Mr. Mercer? Yes, please. I'm sorry for the mess. I don't get many visitors. She sat on the edge of the sofa, notepad ready. We received a complaint from your son Ryan and his wife Vanessa. They are very concerned about your well-being. I blinked, widening my eyes. Ryan? My son? Is he all right? Is Vanessa all right? They were here last night for New Year's Eve. They seemed upset about something. They are fine. They are the ones concerned about you. About me? I let my voice quaver. But why? They stated that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior, that you're not eating properly, that you seem confused, and that you barricaded yourself in your home and refused to let them in. I sank onto the sofa, letting my head fall into my trembling hands. I held the position for 3 seconds, then looked up with glistening eyes. They're such good children, I whispered. They just worry too much, Miss Rivera. They also mentioned you had an outburst, that you became aggressive, and threw them out of the house. I shook my head slowly, as if clearing a fog. Threw them out? I don't think I would do that. Vanessa, she's a good girl. Very practical, very smart. She has big plans. I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. She thinks I have too much space. She wants the house. She keeps telling me. She says, I'm selfish for living here alone. I let my eyes widen with perfectly calibrated terror. She wants to put me in a nursing home, Miss Rivera. One of those places. Miss Rivera's pen stopped moving. His wife Vanessa told you this directly? Oh, yes. Last night. She was very clear. She said she was going to get a judge to say, I'm not right in the head. She said she was going to take the house and sell it. I pointed with a shaking finger toward the fireplace, toward the glass on the floor, and she broke Margaret's picture. My wife, my Maggie, our wedding portrait. She pulled it right off the wall and threw it on the floor. My voice broke. I tried to stop her, but I'm not strong anymore. I just stood there, Miss Rivera turned to look at the glass. When she turned back, something had shifted in her expression. A crack in her professional neutrality. Mrs. Mercer broke a framed photograph? It was an accident. I'm sure. She would never hurt me. She's family. I wiped my eye with the back of my hand. She's just frustrated. She wants to help me, she says. She says I'm not good with money anymore. She says she needs to manage my finances. She says Ryan should be in charge of my pension. Miss Rivera's pen was flying now. I could read the words upside down. Subject reports daughter-in-law pressures regarding finances. Subject reports threats of institutionalization. Evidence of property damage observed. Am I a burden, Miss Rivera? I asked, letting a tear roll down my unshaven cheek. She said I'm selfish. She said I don't deserve this space. Am I a burden? Of course you are not a burden, Mr. Mercer, she said softly. She wants this house, I whispered, as though confessing a terrible secret. She's wanted it since the day she married my son. She told him once, years ago. She thought I wasn't listening. She said, that house is our real retirement plan. We just have to be patient. I heard her say it. Miss Rivera underlined something on her notepad. Twice. Every word, every tremor, every tear was a brushstroke on a canvas that showed exactly what I needed. A terrified, vulnerable old man, making excuses for his abusive daughter-in-law. Vanessa had sent this woman to certify my incompetence. Instead, she had just provided me with an official, government-employed witness to her own conspiracy. Right on cue, the doorbell rang again. Not a frantic pounding. A sharp, clean, authoritative ring. I jumped, clutching my bathrobe. Oh my! Who is that? I'm not expecting anyone else. Maybe it's them. Maybe they've come back. She gets so angry, Miss Rivera. Miss Rivera stood, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. It's all right, Mr. Mercer. I am here. You are safe. I shuffled to the intercom, leaning against the wall, and pressed the button with a trembling finger. Hello? Greg. Open the door. It's Diana. We're running late. The voice that boomed through the intercom speaker was not weak. It was sharp, powerful, and crackled with impatience. The voice of a woman who had spent 30 years in boardrooms where hesitation was a capital offense. Greg, open the door. It's Diana. We're running late. The call with the Singapore investors went long. Miss Chen is with me. We need to review the portfolio before the Asian markets close. I fumbled with the unlock button as if I did not know how it worked. Oh, Diana. Yes. Come up. Miss Rivera looked confused. Diana? My sister, I stammered, shuffling away from the door. She helps me sometimes. With my papers. The elevator groaned to life. Heavy footsteps approached. Not the shuffling steps of an old man, but the fast, confident click of hard-soled Italian shoes on tile. The door swung open and two women stepped inside. The contrast was so stark, it was almost violent. Miss Rivera froze. Diana stood in my doorway like a force of nature. She was immaculate in a charcoal Armani suit that whispered money with every thread. Her silver hair was cut in a sharp, precise bob. A Patek Philippe watch caught the light on her wrist. She carried a slim crocodile leather briefcase and wore an expression that suggested the entire world was running behind schedule. Beside her stood Miss Chen, our lead counsel. Tailored black dress, simple diamond studs, a face that revealed nothing and missed everything. Greg, there you are. Diana strode into the room, her eyes scanning my stained bathrobe and unshaven face with a theatrical flash of annoyance. She did not even glance at Miss Rivera. The entire performance was for her. I'm so sorry we're late, Diana boomed, clapping me on the shoulder with enough energy to nearly knock the frail old man act right out of me. That call. With the Singapore fund managers. They argue over every basis point. Absolute nightmare. And now we're behind on the venture capital review. Miss Rivera's eyes were wide. She was darting her gaze from my worn slippers to Diana's gleaming suit to Miss Chen's crocodile briefcase. The cognitive dissonance in the room was palpable. The confused, paranoid old man described in the APS complaint was standing 3 feet from a woman discussing multi-million-dollar international investments. I played my part. I ran a trembling hand through my uncombed hair. I clutched my bathrobe tighter. Diana? Singapore? I'm confused. What meeting? Diana turned to Miss Rivera as if noticing her for the first time. A polite, dismissive nod. Excuse us, miss. My brother and I have an urgent matter. She turned back to me. Greg, the 3 o'clock. The venture capital fund. We have to finalize the acquisition terms before the markets close. She tapped her watch. Did you forget? I looked at Diana. I looked at Miss Chen. I looked at Miss Rivera, who looked like she was watching a play performed in a language she did not speak. Then I snapped my fingers. Oh my stars! Singapore. The VC fund. Of course. It completely slipped my mind, Diana. I am so sorry. I've had a very distracting morning. Miss Rivera was frozen. Her eyes kept bouncing between Diana's Patek Philippe and my stained bathrobe, between Miss Chen's diamond studs and my scattered newspapers. Her brain was visibly short-circuiting, trying to reconcile the senile, paranoid, aggressive old man described in the complaint with the man who apparently had urgent meetings about international venture capital funds. Miss Chen stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. Her presence alone lowered the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. Excuse me, she said, addressing Miss Rivera with the polite, lethal precision of a surgeon picking up a scalpel. I am Miss Chen, legal counsel for Mr. Harold Mercer. She held out an embossed business card. And you are? I'm Miss Rivera. Adult Protective Services. She held up her badge like a shield. I'm here on the basis of a formal complaint filed by his son and daughter-in-law. A complaint, Miss Chen repeated. How interesting. Because we are here to serve Mr. Mercer with his copy of a temporary restraining order. She opened her briefcase and produced a thick, court-stamped document. Filed this morning by our firm against Mr. Ryan Mercer and Mrs. Vanessa Mercer. She handed a copy to Miss Rivera, who took it automatically, her hand trembling. If you read Section 3, Miss Chen continued, you will see the order has been granted on the basis of documented evidence, including audio recordings, of conspiracy to commit fraud, financial coercion, and a coordinated campaign of harassment for the purpose of defrauding a vulnerable senior citizen. Miss Rivera read the document. Her eyes scanned the legal language, the names Vanessa Mercer and Ryan Mercer appearing over and over. I watched the exact moment she understood. The fake concern. The manufactured complaint. She had not been sent here as a rescuer. She had been sent as a weapon. She looked up at me, and her eyes were filled with a new, horrified understanding. Oh my God, she whispered. I was given false information. This is highly irregular. This is not standard procedure. I am so sorry, Mr. Mercer. Thank you for stopping by, Miss Rivera, I said softly, the gentle old man mask slipping back on. I do appreciate your concern. She practically fled. I heard her footsteps, fast and panicked. Echoing down the stairwell, Diana closed the door slowly. The theatrical amusement drained from her face, replaced by something harder. Phase 2 is complete, she said. Now sit down, Harold. We need to talk about that startup. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope, the full forensic audit report. She spread it across the kitchen table. The digital marketing company Ryan pitched to you, Diana said, her voice flat. It never existed. It was a shell corporation registered in Delaware by 1V Cruz. Vanessa's maiden name. I stared at the front page. $150,000. The money I had given my son as a test of character. February transaction 1, Diana continued. $100,000 wired to a Maserati dealership in Highland Park. The vehicle is registered, titled, and insured exclusively in the name Vanessa Cruz Mercer. I remembered that car. Vanessa had parked it down the block last month when they came for Sunday dinner. A company car, she had bragged, twirling the keys. A performance bonus. The remaining $50,000, Diana said, was moved in a series of transfers routed through 2 shell accounts before landing in a private numbered account at a bank in the Cayman Islands. Under her maiden name, I let the report fall from my hands. She was not just stealing from me. She was building her own escape route. She had no intention of staying with Ryan. She was draining every asset she could reach before she disappeared. But that's not the worst of it, Diana said quietly. She pulled out a second file. Between March and November of last year, someone accessed Ryan's work computer after hours. 17 times. They downloaded confidential client financial data, portfolios, social security numbers, account details. The data was sold to a competing firm through encrypted channels. Payments were routed to the same Cayman account. My blood went cold. Corporate espionage, federal crime, Diana confirmed. And the access credentials used were Ryan's. If we hadn't caught it, he would be the one facing charges. She set him up as her fall guy, Harold. Your son was going to prison for crimes his wife committed. I closed my eyes. The fury I felt was no longer just for myself. It was for Ryan. He was a fool and a coward. But he was my son, and she was destroying him from the inside out. Do we tell him? I asked. Diana shook her head. Not yet. If we warn him, he warns her. We need her to come to us, Harold. We need her to walk into a room carrying every crime she's committed and lay it on the table herself. The bait, I said. The bait, Diana confirmed. And I know exactly what cheese she can't resist. The motel room smelled of bleach, stale cigarettes, and the kind of quiet desperation that seeps into wallpaper and never comes out. A buzzing fluorescent light above the bathroom mirror cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. Outside, a neon vacancy sign painted the thin curtains in alternating shades of red and green, a grotesque parody of the holiday lights they had left behind 48 hours ago. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. His expensive coat was draped over a chair that wobbled on 3 good legs. His shoes, the Italian loafers Vanessa had insisted he buy on credit, were still wet from the slush outside. He had not changed clothes since New Year's Eve. Vanessa paced the narrow strip of carpet between the beds. Back and forth. Back and forth. Her heels had been abandoned by the door, and in her stocking feet she looked smaller, diminished, like a predator stripped of its claws. This is your fault, she said. The words dropped into the silence like stones into a well. Ryan looked up slowly. My fault? Yes. You. You were supposed to know your own father. He's just a simple old man, you said. He's lonely. He's confused. He'll give in eventually. Her voice was rising, cracking at the edges. You've lived with him your whole life and you never once realized who he was. What kind of son doesn't know his own father? And you were the one who smashed Mom's portrait, Ryan said quietly. It was the first time he had pushed back in 2 days. You were the one who demanded the house. You were the one who called APS. This was your plan, Vanessa. Every single step. I did it for us, she screamed. The words bounced off the thin motel walls. Someone in the next room banged twice. She lowered her voice, but the fury remained, coiled and lethal. While you were failing at your job, I was trying to build us a future, and you were too weak to back me up when it mattered. A sharp knock on the door froze them both. Courier. Package for Mrs. Vanessa Mercer. Vanessa was at the door in an instant. She signed with a flourish, as though she were still the woman who signed for packages at a Gold Coast penthouse, and tore the envelope open with her nails. Her eyes scanned the document. The color drained from her face, then returned, then drained again. What is it? Ryan asked. She handed it to him without a word. Temporary restraining order. The language was dense, but the message was brutal. Forbidden from contacting Harold Mercer. Forbidden from coming within 500 feet of his property. Forbidden from making inquiries into his financial or medical affairs. And at the bottom, a paragraph that made Ryan's hands shake. A formal complaint forwarded to the district attorney's office for investigation into conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. He's destroying us, Ryan whispered. Vanessa stared at the wall. She was silent for a long time. Ryan expected tears. He expected rage. He expected another eruption. But when she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. No, she said. He thinks he's destroying us. But he made a mistake. A man that rich, hiding it for that long, pretending to be that poor. He's not just hiding money, Ryan. He's hiding something dirty. Nobody builds that kind of wall unless they have something behind it they don't want anyone to see. She grabbed her laptop from the suitcase. The screen flickered to life. "What are you doing?" Ryan asked. "What I should have done from the beginning," she said, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "I'm not his victim, Ryan. I'm his opponent. And I am going to find his skeleton. 15 miles south." In the warm glow of my living room fireplace, Diana and I sat in facing armchairs. 2 cups of black coffee on the table between us. Maggie's broken portrait, now carefully wrapped in cloth, rested on the bookshelf behind me. "She's searching right now," Diana said. She was scrolling through her phone, reading updates from the private investigator we had embedded in Harrison's firm. "She's been online for 3 hours. Public records. Corporate databases. She's good, Harold. Thorough. She won't find anything real," I said. "No. But she'll find what we want her to find." Diana set her phone down and looked at me. "Harrison will make contact within the hour. He'll approach her through a burner phone, posing as a disgruntled former client of Miss Chen. He'll tell Vanessa he heard about her situation. He'll tell her that Miss Chen is dirty. And he'll tell her that he knows someone who can help. And the documents? Beautiful," Diana said, a thin smile crossing her face. "Our forensic accounting team in Zurich built them overnight. Swiss bank statements, wire transfer codes, shell company registrations in Panama, all of it pointing to one glorious, highly illegal, and completely fictional conclusion. That I'm a tax evader," I said. "Not just a tax evader. A massive, systematic, international one. The documents show that Mercer Holdings is a local front for a 20-year scheme funneling undeclared millions through offshore accounts. It uses just enough real information, your name, my name, the properties, to be absolutely convincing to a desperate, greedy amateur." I stared into the fire. The flames twisted and popped, sending small sparks up the chimney. "We're manipulating her, Diana." My sister leaned forward. "She manipulated you first. She smashed Maggie's portrait. She stole $150,000. She is selling stolen corporate data, using your son's identity. She was going to have you declared incompetent and locked in a nursing home so she could sell your house." Diana's voice was hard, but not unkind. "We are not manipulating her, Harold. We are giving her enough rope to hang herself. The only question is whether she'll tie the knot." My phone buzzed. A text from our investigator. 2 words. She bit. Diana read it over my shoulder. "Harrison made contact. He fed her the documents. She took everything." I closed my eyes. I could picture it. Vanessa in that motel room, hunched over her laptop, eyes glowing in the dim light, as page after page of fabricated Swiss bank records scrolled across her screen. The wire transfers, the shell companies, the account numbers. Each one more damning than the last. Each one perfectly, meticulously, irresistibly fake. To a professional forensic accountant, the documents would not survive 10 minutes of scrutiny. But Vanessa was not a professional. She was a desperate woman With a master's degree and a pathological need to win, she would see what she wanted to see. She would see a weapon. "She's going to call me," I said quietly. "She's going to try to blackmail me." "Of course she is," Diana replied. "Greed is the most predictable of all human failings. The mouse has found the cheese, Harold. Now we wait for her to step on the spring." I looked at the fire. I thought about Ryan, sitting in that motel room, watching his wife plot his father's destruction, and believing he had no choice but to follow her. I thought about the boy who used to sit on my lap and point at the moon. "When this is over," I said, "he's going to have nothing, Diana. No wife, no home, no money, no father. He'll have the truth," Diana said. "For the first time in his life, he'll have the truth. What he does with it will be up to him." I nodded slowly. She was right. But knowing she was right did not make it hurt any less. The call came at exactly 9 the following morning. I was sitting in Maggie's armchair, a cup of black coffee in my hand, watching the pale winter light creep across the living room floor. The house was quiet. The house was always quiet now, and I had made my peace with it. Silence, I had learned, was not the enemy. It was the space between the notes that gave the music its meaning. My phone buzzed on the side table. Unlisted number. I smiled. Right on schedule. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up, held it to my ear, and said nothing. I just waited. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then a voice. But not the Vanessa I had heard, screaming through the intercom at 2 in the morning. Not the Vanessa who had sobbed in a motel parking lot. This was a new version. A final form. Her voice was low, smooth, and dripping with the cold, confident purr of a predator that believed it had cornered its prey. "Harold." She let my name hang in the air. "I'm sure you've been wondering what I've been doing for the last 48 hours. "Vanessa," I said, pitching my voice to sound tired and confused. "I told you. My lawyer said I'm not supposed to." "Oh, shut up." Her voice snapped like a whip. "The act is over." The confused old man. The trembling hands. The bathrobe. "It's done. I know everything." She let out a short, ugly laugh. "You really thought you were clever, didn't you? Hiding in plain sight. The retired architect. The modest pension. The humble Victorian. You thought you had us completely fooled." "I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, letting my voice tremble. "Stop it!" she roared, the mask of calm cracking for a moment before she pulled it back together. "I'm not playing your game anymore, Harold. I'm starting my own." I spoke to a real lawyer, one who wasn't afraid to do some actual digging, and he found it all. My heart rate stayed perfectly even, but I held the phone a fraction tighter. "Switzerland," she whispered, savoring the word like expensive wine. "Does that ring a bell?" "Panama. VM Capital Investments SA." She was reading from the bait. Every word. Every fabricated detail that Diana's forensic team had spent all night constructing. "I have the wire transfer records," she continued, her voice thick with sadistic pleasure. "Millions and millions of dollars flowing through offshore shell companies for 20 years. You haven't just been hiding money from us, Harold. You've been hiding it from the government. You're not just a cruel old man. You're a tax evader. A fraud. A criminal." "Vanessa, no. That's not. So here's what's going to happen." She cut me off, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You are going to call off your legal attack dog, Miss Chen. You are going to drop the restraining order. You are going to sign the deed to the Victorian over to me. Not Ryan. To me. And then," she continued, each word, a nail being driven into a coffin she believed she was building around me, "you are going to wire $3 million cash into an account I designate. $3 million. That should be easy to pull from one of those Swiss accounts, don't you think? $3 million. I whispered. playing my role to perfection. Vanessa, I don't have. Don't lie to me. Her voice was a blade. I have the statements. 3 million is pocket change for a man with your portfolio. Consider it a family settlement. Compensation for the emotional distress and public humiliation you have caused us. I let a silence stretch between us. Then, with a voice that I made crack at precisely the right moment, I asked the question she was waiting for. And if I don't? If you don't, she said. And I could hear the smile in her voice, the intoxicating thrill of absolute power. Then this entire beautiful, detailed file, every account number, every routing code, every wire transfer, gets hand-delivered to a special agent I know at the IRS. And you, Harold, will spend the rest of your golden years in a federal penitentiary. I wonder how Mercer Holdings will run from a prison cell. You're blackmailing me, I said, letting my voice tremble with perfectly manufactured despair. I'm negotiating, she corrected. A much better deal than you ever offered us. You have 24 hours. By this time tomorrow, I either own that house and have 3 million in my account, or you are the subject of a federal investigation. She paused, and I heard her take a breath. The breath of a woman standing on the summit of what she believed was her greatest victory. Tick-tock, Harold. Now it was time. I had to make her believe she had won completely. I had to sound broken. No, I stammered, letting a desperate cracking panic rise in my voice. Vanessa, please. You can't. You don't know what you're doing. This is a terrible mistake. You'll ruin the family name. You ruined it when you crossed me, she spat. 24 hours. Wait! I shouted, the word torn from my throat. Wait! Don't do anything. Not yet. I took a shaky, rattling breath. You're right. You win. You win, Vanessa. I let out a dry, broken sound. A performance of total surrender. You win. Just don't call anyone. Please. I'll do whatever you want. A long, slow, satisfied exhale on the other end. The sound of a predator settling into its kill. I knew you'd see it my way, she said, her voice dripping with smugness. 3 million and the house. Tomorrow. Yes. Okay. I let my voice crack and sniffle. But not like this. We have to do it properly. Legally. We need to meet at Miss Chen's office, with the lawyers, to sign everything officially. Tomorrow at 10. I paused. Just please don't call the IRS. Please, Vanessa. I'll do whatever you want. There was a long, delicious pause. I could practically hear her mind savoring the image. Me, the powerful man who had humiliated her, broken and weeping, walking into my own lawyer's office to sign away my home and my fortune to her. It was too perfect for her to resist. Fine, she said. 10 a.m. My lawyer will contact yours. She paused. And Harold? Yes? I whispered. Don't try anything stupid. I'm holding all the cards now. I know, I said. My voice choked with fake tears. I know you are. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there for a long moment, the dead silence of the disconnected call buzzing faintly in my ear. Then I lowered the phone. I looked at it, and the trembling old man vanished. My back straightened. My jaw set. My eyes, which had been wide and wet and frightened for the last 5 minutes, went cold and flat and absolutely still. I dialed Diana. She picked up before the first ring finished. She wants 3 million. And the house, I said, my voice level as a frozen lake. She's coming to Miss Chen's office tomorrow at 10. The FBI? Have them in the lobby by 9:45. All 3 folders on the table, Diana. The foundation documents, the audit, and the espionage file. I want her to see every single door close around her. One at a time. It ends tomorrow, Harold. I looked at Maggie's portrait on the bookshelf. her laughing face behind the cracked glass. The crack that ran right through her smile. "It ends tomorrow," I said. The conference room at Chen Legal occupied the entire 50th floor of a glass tower on Michigan Avenue. One wall was nothing but window, and through it, Lake Michigan stretched to the horizon like a sheet of hammered steel under the gray January sky. The table was a single massive slab of polished mahogany, cold to the touch, long enough to seat 20. Today it only needed 6. I arrived early. Diana and I took our positions on the east side of the table, our backs to the lake. Miss Chen sat between us. 3 identical leather-bound folders arranged in a precise row in front of her. She had not spoken since we arrived. She did not need to. Her silence was its own language, and it said everything. I looked at those 3 folders. Each one a door, each one a trap, and each one would close around Vanessa in sequence, like the walls of a room slowly shrinking. At exactly 10 o'clock, the heavy mahogany doors at the far end of the conference room swung open. Vanessa walked in first. She was radiant. She had found somewhere to shower and change, and she was dressed for war. A sharp, navy blazer, pressed white blouse, hair pulled back tight. She looked like a woman who had already won and was simply arriving to collect the trophy. Behind her came Ryan. He was a ghost, pale, unshaved, hollow-eyed. He walked with the careful, shuffling gait of a man who had not slept in 3 days and was no longer entirely sure where he was. He did not look at me. He did not look at anyone. He just sat down and stared at the table. And behind them both, trailing like a nervous shadow, came Mr. Grady, Vanessa's lawyer. He was a small, perspiring man in an ill-fitting gray suit who looked as though he had obtained his law degree from the back of a cereal box. He fumbled with his briefcase, nearly dropping it, and sat down with the visible discomfort of a man who had just realized he was profoundly out of his depth. Miss Chen regarded him over the top of her glasses. She said nothing. She did not need to. Mr. Grady's Adam's apple bobbed twice. "Well, Harold," Vanessa began. Her voice echoed in the vast room, confident and clear. She leaned back in her leather chair, crossed her legs, and folded her hands on the table, the very picture of smug triumph. "I'm so glad we could all get together civilly. Like adults." I said nothing. I let her talk. It was always better to let them talk. "My client, Mr. Grady began, clearing his throat with a wet, uncomfortable sound, believes that a mutually beneficial arrangement can be reached that will avoid, unpleasant legal entanglements for all parties involved." Miss Chen looked at him. The look lasted exactly 3 seconds. It was the kind of look that made seasoned prosecutors stammer. Mr. Grady wilted like a flower in a furnace. "I was not aware this was a negotiation," Miss Chen said, her voice flat and precise. "I was under the impression your clients were here to respond to a restraining order and, if I'm not mistaken, a pending criminal referral." Vanessa laughed. A short, sharp, theatrical sound. "Oh, your lawyer is good, Harold. I'll give her that. Excellent poker face." She reached into her own briefcase and pulled out a thick bound document. She slid it across the polished table. It glided smoothly and stopped directly in front of me. "But we're not here to talk about restraining orders," she said. "We're here to talk about this." I looked at the cover page. It was the masterpiece. The fabricated Swiss bank logos, the official-looking Zurich letterheads, the Panama incorporation papers, all of it printed on heavy stock, bound with a professional spine, looking absolutely, devastatingly authentic. "That," Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, "is a file documenting 20 years of systematic international tax evasion. Millions of dollars, Harold. Millions. Funneled through offshore shell companies in Panama, hidden in numbered accounts in Zurich." She paused, savoring the moment. Mr. Grady was staring at the document as though he had never seen it before. Because he had not. Vanessa had kept her real weapon hidden from her own lawyer until this moment. My source found everything, she continued, her eyes locked on mine. Every wire transfer, every shell company, every secret account. You haven't just been hiding money from your family, Harold. You've been hiding it from the United States government. She leaned forward, her palms flat on the table. So here is the offer. It's very simple. Her voice turned to polished steel. 1. You sign the deed to the Victorian over to me immediately. Full ownership. No conditions. 2. You wire $3 million into an account I designate. $3 million. That's barely a rounding error for a man with your hidden portfolio. Ryan finally stirred. He leaned forward, his voice thin and hoarse. Just sign it, Dad. Please. It's just money. It's just a house. It's not worth all this. Just sign it so we can all go home. Go home? I repeated, looking at my son. Ryan, you don't have a home. Sign the papers, Harold. Vanessa slammed her palm on the mahogany. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Her composure, so carefully maintained, fractured for just a moment, revealing the raw, desperate fury underneath. Sign them, or I walk out that door and I make one phone call. One call to the IRS, and your next meeting won't be in a conference room. It will be in a federal courtroom. She was breathing hard. Her eyes were bright, with the intoxicating rush of what she believed was absolute, unchallengeable power. $3 million in the house. She repeated. That's the deal. Take it, or get yourself a cellmate. The silence that followed was vast and heavy. It filled the room like water filling a sinking ship. I could hear the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. I could hear Mr. Grady's pen scratching nervously against his legal pad. I could hear Ryan breathing through his mouth, shallow and ragged. I looked at Diana. She had not moved. She had not blinked. She had not spoken a single word since the meeting began. Now, for the first time, she shifted. It was barely perceptible. A tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I looked at Miss Chen. She was already reaching for the first leather-bound folder. I looked back at Vanessa. Her face was flushed with victory. Her eyes were shining. She truly, completely, absolutely believed she had won. Well, Vanessa, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was no longer the trembling, confused voice of a frightened old man. It was clear. It was level. It was the voice of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. That is a fascinating offer. Vanessa's triumphant smirk was still painted across her face. She was leaning back, tapping her manicured nails on the mahogany in a slow, satisfied rhythm. The very picture of a woman who had won. Her lawyer, Mr. Grady, was nervously reorganizing his papers, relieved that his client's insane gamble appeared to be paying off, and Ryan sat motionless, pale as plaster, staring at a point on the table 6 inches in front of his hands. Diana had not spoken. She had not moved. She had been a statue for the entire meeting, her hands folded, her expression as blank and smooth as the lake outside the window. Now she moved. It was slow and deliberate. She reached into the breast pocket of her charcoal Armani suit and withdrew a slim platinum business card case. With a flick of her thumb, she slid out a single card. She placed it on the table and pushed it forward with one finger. It glided across the polished mahogany and came to rest directly in front of Vanessa's thick, fabricated report. Please, Diana said. Her voice was quiet. It was the kind of quiet that absorbed all other sound in the room, like a black hole swallowing light. Go ahead. Send it. Vanessa's tapping stopped. Her smile flickered. What? Your file, Diana said, gesturing to the bound document with an expression of mild curiosity, as if someone had handed her a restaurant menu in a language she did not speak. Your evidence of my brother's international tax fraud. By all means, forward it to the IRS. She tapped the business card with her index finger. That is the personal desk line for Agent Morrison, head of the International High Wealth Enforcement Division. He is a close personal friend. We play golf every Saturday at Medina. He has been expecting your report." Vanessa's face underwent a transformation that I will remember for the rest of my life. The smugness did not just fade. It evaporated. It was replaced by something raw and animal, a flickering confusion that darted behind her eyes like a fish trapped in a shrinking pool. "I don't understand," she stammered. "What kind of trick is this?" "It is no trick, Vanessa," Diana said. She reached across the table and picked up the fabricated file. She held it up, weighed it in her hand with an expression of bored appraisal, and then let it drop back to the table with a flat, dismissive thud. "This is a lovely piece of fiction. My compliments to Mr. Harrison. His forgery skills are adequate, but he really should check his details." Diana signaled to Miss Chen, who opened the first leather-bound folder and produced a single document. It was heavily embossed, bearing the seal of the state of New York and the counter-signature of a federal registrar. "You are right about one thing," Diana continued, her voice smooth and precise. "There is a VM Capital Investments registered in Switzerland. But you did not read the actual charter, did you? You only read the version Mr. Harrison fabricated for you." She slid the document across the table. Vanessa's eyes locked onto it with the terrified fascination of someone watching a car accident in slow motion. It was my turn. I leaned forward. For the first time in the meeting I spoke, not with the trembling, confused voice of a frightened old man, not with the cracking, tearful surrender I had performed on the phone. My voice was quiet, steady, and clear as glass. "That document," I said, "is the Articles of Incorporation for the Victoria and Margaret Charitable Foundation." Vanessa's mouth opened. No sound came out. "VM Capital does not stand for venture capital, Vanessa." I held her gaze. "It stands for Victoria, my mother, and Margaret." I paused. "The woman whose wedding portrait you ripped off my wall and smashed on my floor on New Year's Eve." The words landed in the silence like stones dropped into deep water. I watched the ripples spread across her face. Confusion, disbelief, the slow, terrible dawning of understanding. Miss Chen leaned forward, her voice slicing through the stillness with surgical precision. "The Victoria and Margaret Foundation is a fully legal, federally registered 501c3 charitable trust, incorporated in the state of Illinois, with a corresponding international holding entity for our European endowments. All accounts are fully disclosed, independently audited on an annual basis, and filed with both United States and Swiss tax authorities. Every dollar is accounted for." She adjusted her glasses and continued. "The foundation currently funds 4 homeless shelters across the greater Chicago area, the entire pediatric oncology wing at Chicago General Hospital, 12 music scholarships at the Chicago Conservatory, and a network of after-school arts programs serving over 3,000 children on the South Side." Vanessa was shaking her head. Small, rapid movements. The head shake of someone whose operating system had just crashed. "Every wire transfer you identified as evidence of criminal activity," Miss Chen continued, "was Mr. Mercer funding a children's hospital, or a food bank, or a scholarship for a young musician who could not afford tuition." She closed the folder with a quiet, final click. "Your evidence is not merely wrong, Mrs. Mercer. It is an insult. And Mr. Harrison," Diana added, her voice carrying a thin edge of amusement, "your generous source, the lawyer who provided these documents. He has been cooperating with our firm for 6 months as part of a settlement agreement related to his own disbarment proceedings. He did not stumble upon this information. We gave it to him. Every page, every number, every beautifully forged Swiss letterhead." Mr. Grady made a sound. It was a small, wet, strangled sound, like a man who had just swallowed his own tongue. He was sinking into his chair, as though the leather itself was trying to consume him. Vanessa stared at the foundation charter. She stared at Diana's business card with Agent Morrison's number. She stared at the fabricated file that 5 minutes ago had been her nuclear weapon and was now a pile of worthless paper. She looked at me. and in her eyes, for the first time, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Real, primal, uncontrollable fear. The fear of a predator that has just discovered it is not the hunter. It is the prey. "Now," Miss Chen said, and her voice dropped another degree. She placed her hand on the second leather-bound folder, the one Vanessa had not seen yet. "Now that we have addressed your accusations, Mrs. Mercer, let us address ours." She opened the folder. "Let's talk about that $150,000. Every remaining trace of color drained from Vanessa's face. She went from pale to chalk white to something that was barely a color at all. It was the complexion of a woman who had just realized that the ground beneath her feet was not ground at all. It was a trapdoor, and it had just opened. Miss Chen opened the second folder with the slow, deliberate precision of a surgeon making an incision. She did not rush. She did not need to. The patient was already on the table. 2 years ago. She began, her voice flat and clinical. Mr. Harold Mercer provided a sum of $150,000 to his son, Mr. Ryan Mercer, for the stated purpose of launching a digital marketing startup. I watched Ryan's face. He had been staring at the table throughout the entire first reversal. A man in a trance, barely registering the collapse of his wife's extortion scheme. But at the words digital marketing startup, something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. And the first cold touch of dread. I remembered the day that money left my account. Ryan had shown up at the Victorian, unannounced, pounding on the door, vibrating with a manic energy I had not seen since he was a boy chasing fireflies in the backyard. "Dad, this is it. This is the one." He had been pacing my living room, his expensive shoes muffled by the old Persian rug. "A digital marketing startup. Vanessa's colleague is a genius. We're getting in on the ground floor." I had sat in Maggie's armchair and played my part. I wrung my hands. I looked worried. "A startup, Ryan. That sounds very risky." "That are us. Dad, don't you get it? This is our chance to finally get ahead. To stop worrying about money every single month." Then came the look. The one he saved for when he truly needed something. A cocktail of desperate hope and profound entitlement. "Dad, I need $150,000. I had performed the role of a conflicted father to perfection. The heavy sighs, the rubbing of temples, the shuffling walk to the old desk. I pulled out a savings passbook from the bottom drawer, a prop I kept for exactly this kind of performance, and held it out with trembling hands. "This is everything, Ryan," I had lied, my voice cracking. "This is all the money your mother and I saved. Our entire life savings." His eyes had gone wide. To him, it was a fortune. To me, it was what my portfolio earned in a slow afternoon. "If I give you this," I had said, gripping his shoulder, "there is nothing left. You cannot fail. You cannot lose this money. I won't let you down, Dad. I promise." He had hugged me and practically run out the door. I had closed it behind him, picked up my real phone, and called Diana. "It's done. He has the money. Start the audit trail." That was 2 years ago. The test of character. The lifeline I had thrown to see if my son would swim or drown. He had drowned. And now, in this conference room on the 50th floor, the autopsy was about to begin. "Mr. Mercer," Miss Chen said, pulling the room back to the present. She was addressing Ryan now, and her tone had shifted. If she had been cold with Vanessa, she was surgical with him. "I want to clarify something. You referred to this money as a gift. It was not a gift." She slid a document across the table. Ryan stared at it. His own signature, clear and bold, at the bottom of the last page. "This is a legally binding loan agreement," Miss Chen continued, "executed between the VM Investment Fund and Mr. Ryan Mercer. 0 interest. Generous terms, but contingent upon several key conditions, including Article 7, Section 3, which we refer to as the ethics clause. Vanessa made a small, strangled sound. 150,000. The number was connecting to other numbers in her head. The Maserati. The Cayman account. The money she had stolen was not a gift from a senile old man. It was a legally binding, contractually protected loan. Miss Chen turned a page. Let us review the disbursement. February 10th, 2 years ago. $150,000 deposited into the MB Marketing checking account. An account for which you, Mrs. Mercer, were the sole signatory. She looked at Vanessa. Curious. For your husband's company. February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, Mr. Mercer. Miss Chen's voice carried no inflection. The first transaction, a wire transfer of $100,000 to a Maserati dealership in Highland Park, Illinois. The vehicle, a red Levante, is registered, titled, and insured exclusively in the name of Vanessa Cruz Mercer. Ryan's head turned slowly toward his wife. His face was a landscape of devastation. The Maserati, he whispered. You told me it was a company car. A performance bonus from your new position. Vanessa opened her mouth. It was a business expense. An investment in the remaining $50,000, Miss Chen continued, not even acknowledging Vanessa's attempt to speak, was not allocated to business operations. It was moved in a series of 3 transfers routed through 2 separate shell accounts before landing in a private numbered account at the Cayman National Bank. She produced a single wire transfer receipt and held it up. An account opened on February 1st. 2 weeks before the loan was even disbursed. Under the name Vanessa Cruz. The silence that followed was not silence at all. It was the sound of a marriage dying. It was the sound of every lie, every manipulation, every whispered reassurance crumbling to dust in real time. Ryan stood up. The motion was so sudden that his chair toppled backward and hit the floor with a crack that echoed through the room like a gunshot. The fight's about money, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You told me we were broke. You told me the company was struggling to find clients. You said we couldn't afford groceries some weeks. His voice was rising, trembling, cracking. You were moving it. The whole time. You were moving our money into your own account. No, Ryan. It was a safety net, Vanessa cried. Her voice desperate now. All pretense of control gone. In case he cut us off. I was protecting us. Protecting us? Ryan repeated. Or protecting you? He pointed a shaking finger at her. The car is in your name. The account is in your maiden name. You were building an exit, weren't you? You were bleeding him dry, and you were stealing from me, and you were going to disappear. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. No words came. I lied to my father for you, Ryan said, his voice dropping to something raw and terrible. I stood in his kitchen, and I watched you smash my mother's wedding portrait. My mother. His voice broke on the word. And the whole time, you were stealing from me. Miss Chen let his words echo and fade. She let the devastation settle. Then she spoke. That, Mr. Mercer, she said, her voice quiet, was merely a breach of contract. A civil matter. Expensive, certainly, but civil. She reached for the third folder. The last one. The thickest one. What your wife did next, Miss Chen said, is a federal crime. Miss Chen did not pause. She did not take a breath. She did not offer Vanessa a glass of water or a moment to collect herself. She simply closed the second folder, set it aside with the precision of a surgeon laying down a scalpel, and reached for the third. The third folder was different. It was thicker than the others. Red tab on the spine. A single word printed on the cover in bold black letters. Confidential. Miss Chen placed it in the center of the mahogany table and let it sit there for exactly 5 seconds before she opened it. 5 seconds of silence that felt like 5 years. I watched Vanessa during those 5 seconds. She was no longer the woman who had walked into this room with war paint and a predator's smile. Her lips were pressed together so tightly they had turned white. Her fingers gripped the armrest of her chair, like she was trying to hold on to the last ledge of a collapsing building. She knew. Somewhere deep in that calculating mind of hers, she already knew what was coming. But knowing and hearing are two very different things. Miss Chen opened the folder and removed a stack of printed emails. 17 pages, each one time stamped, IP traced, and annotated in red ink by a forensic digital analyst whose credentials took up half a page on their own. She slid the stack across the table toward Mr. Grady, who picked up the first page with trembling hands. Between January 15th and March 28th of this year, Miss Chen began, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who has rehearsed a closing argument 1,000 times. Mrs. Vanessa Cruz Mercer accessed her husband's work laptop on 17 separate occasions. She used his company credentials to log into the internal client management system of Whitfield & Partners, a mid-tier wealth management firm where Mr. Ryan Mercer served as a junior portfolio analyst. Ryan's head snapped toward Vanessa. She did not look at him. She stared straight ahead at the Lake Michigan skyline, as though the glass wall might shatter and swallow her whole. Miss Chen continued. During those 17 access points, Mrs. Mercer downloaded confidential client data. Names, account balances, investment strategies, risk profiles, social security numbers, the personal financial architecture of over 300 high-net-worth individuals, exposed and extracted onto an external hard drive. I felt my stomach tighten. I had known about the money. I had known about the Maserati and the Cayman accounts. Diana had briefed me on every detail weeks ago, but hearing it laid out like this, in this sterile conference room with the winter sun cutting across the table, made it real in a way that preparation never could. She then sold that data, Miss Chen said, and her voice dropped half a register, to a competing firm, Linden Grove Capital. The transaction was conducted through an encrypted messaging platform using a pseudonym. The payment, $42,000, was routed through a cryptocurrency wallet and converted into cash deposits across 4 separate ATM transactions in the suburbs of Chicago. Mr. Grady set the papers down. His face had gone from red to gray. He leaned toward Vanessa and whispered something I could not hear, but his body language told me everything. He was telling her to stop talking. He was telling her this was no longer a civil matter. He was telling her they were standing at the edge of a cliff, and she had already jumped. Ryan pushed back from the table. His chair scraped against the floor with a sound that cut through the room like a blade. "You used my computer?" His voice cracked on the last word. Not anger. Something worse. Recognition. The recognition that every suspicion he had buried, every excuse he had made, every lie he had chosen to believe, had been leading to this exact moment. Vanessa finally spoke. "Ryan, listen to me. I can explain." "Explain what?" Ryan's voice rose. "You stole from my clients. You used my name. You used my login. If they trace this back, it is not your career that ends. It is mine. It is my license, my reputation. Everything I built, everything your father built," Vanessa corrected. And even now, even standing in the rubble of her own destruction, she could not resist the cruelty. It was instinct for her, a reflex, like breathing. Diana placed her hand on my arm, a gentle pressure that said, "Not yet. Let the room do the work." I stayed silent. I watched my son's face as 27 years of fatherhood collapsed into a single expression. Shame. Pure, undiluted shame. Miss Chen was not finished. She removed one final document from the folder, a single sheet of paper with a blue Department of Justice letterhead. She placed it in front of Vanessa and read it aloud. "This is a formal notification that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has opened an active investigation into the unauthorized access and sale of protected financial data in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act the wire fraud statute under Title 18, Section 1343, and the Identity Theft Enforcement and Restitution Act. Mrs. Mercer, you are identified as the primary subject of this investigation. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of stillness that comes after a detonation, when the air itself seems to hold its breath. Mr. Grady stood up. This meeting is over. My client will not be answering any further questions. She does not need to, Ms. Chen replied. The evidence answers for her. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stood. For one brief moment, she looked at me. Not at Diana. Not at Miss Chen. At me. And in her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Not fear. Not regret. Calculation. Even now, cornered and exposed, her mind was running scenarios, looking for exits, searching for one more angle to play. I leaned forward in my chair and spoke for the first time since the meeting began. My voice was quiet. Steady. The same voice I had used 40 years ago when I told clients that their building design was flawed and needed to be torn down to the foundation. Vanessa. There are no more doors. There are no more hallways. There is no more room to run. The only thing left is the truth, and it has been sitting in this room longer than any of us. She turned and walked out. Mr. Grady followed, briefcase clutched to his chest like a shield. The glass door swung shut behind them with a soft click that sounded, to me, like the closing of a chapter. Ryan did not move. He sat in his chair, staring at the stack of emails, at the DOJ letter, at the empty seat where his wife had been. His hands were flat on the table. His wedding ring caught the light from the window. Diana leaned toward me. Phase 3, she whispered. Complete. I nodded. But I was not looking at Diana. I was looking at my son. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I did not feel victory. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt the weight of what we had done and what still remained to be done, because dismantling a lie is not the same as rebuilding a life. And the hardest part of this story was not the trap or the evidence or the federal letters. The hardest part was still sitting across from me, staring at his own hands, trying to remember who he was before she taught him to forget. The conference room emptied slowly. Miss Chen gathered her 3 folders, aligned their edges with the patience of a woman who understood that order was a philosophy, and placed them into her briefcase. Diana stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, voice too low to catch. Ryan had not moved. Hands flat on the mahogany. Eyes fixed on the space where Vanessa had been sitting 3 minutes ago. I wanted to go to him. Every instinct told me to cross the room and say something. But I had learned something in 72 years that most people never learn. There are moments when presence is enough, and words are trespass. So I stayed in my chair and gave my son the only gift I had left. Silence. Diana ended her call and walked toward me. Morrison's team is downstairs. 2 vehicles in the parking structure. 4 agents in the lobby. The warrant was signed by Judge Callahan at 6:15 this morning. She paused. The moment Vanessa exits the building, they approach. Public enough to be witnessed. Private enough to avoid a scene. I stood and walked to the window. 50 floors below, Michigan Avenue stretched south like a gray ribbon stitched with yellow cabs and winter coats. Lake Michigan sat beyond, flat and silver under a January sky, drained of every color except cold. Somewhere down there, Vanessa Cruz Mercer was stepping out of an elevator, crossing a marble lobby, and walking into the last free morning of her life. I did not have to see it. Diana told me later. The federal arrest report filled in every remaining gap. Vanessa exited at 10:47. Mr. Grady beside her, already composing the withdrawal letter he would file before noon. They made it 11 steps past the revolving door. 11 steps. I counted them on the security footage weeks later, because somehow the specificity of that number mattered to me. 11 steps between the end of one life and the beginning of another. Agent Morrison approached from the east. Tall, mid-40s, dark blue overcoat, badge at chest level. 2 agents flanked him. A 4th stood near a black sedan at the curb. Engine running, back door open. Mrs. Vanessa Cruz Mercer. I am Special Agent Daniel Morrison with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and unauthorized access to protected financial systems. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed for you. Mr. Grady stepped forward. I am her attorney. I need to speak with my client. You may speak with her at the field office, Morrison replied. Transport has been arranged. I was not there for the handcuffs. I was not there for the click of metal or the sound of her heels on concrete as they guided her to the sedan. I was 50 floors above, watching a black car pull away from a curb and merge into traffic like any other vehicle on any other morning. But Ryan was there. He had taken the elevator down 2 minutes after Vanessa and arrived in the lobby just in time to see his wife escorted through the revolving door in handcuffs. He told me this months later. Over a cup of coffee, neither of us finished. He said he stood behind a column and watched through the glass. He did not call out. He did not run. He did not intervene. And then he did something that broke me more than anything Vanessa had ever done. He sat down on the lobby floor, put his back against that marble column, and cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. He cried the way a man cries when he has run out of lies to tell himself. Quietly. Completely. Like a building, settling into its own collapse. Diana found him there 15 minutes later. She did not speak. She sat down on the cold marble beside him, in her Armani suit and her Patek Philippe watch. And she waited. That is what the Mercer family does. We plan. We execute. But when someone we love is sitting on the floor of their own wreckage, we sit down beside them and we wait. I remained at the window long after the sedan disappeared. The lake had not changed. Michigan Avenue still hummed with mechanical indifference. The world does not stop for an arrest. It does not pause for the end of a marriage or the moment a 72-year-old man realizes that winning and losing can feel exactly the same. Miss Chen appeared beside me. She placed a single sheet on the window ledge. A summary of charges. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Identity theft. Unauthorized access. Computer fraud. Each count carried its own sentencing range, its own quiet devastation. The preliminary hearing is next Thursday, she said. Morrison's team has everything. The digital forensics are airtight. The cryptocurrency trail has been fully mapped. Linden Grove Capital is cooperating. I picked up the paper, folded it once, and placed it in my jacket pocket. And Ryan? Miss Chen hesitated. The first time I had ever seen her hesitate. Ryan is not named in the federal complaint. The evidence shows the access was unauthorized. His credentials were used without his knowledge. Whitfield and partners may pursue internal action, but criminally, he is a victim. I exhaled. The first full breath in hours. My son was many things. Weak, misguided, blinded by a woman who wore loyalty like a costume and discarded it when it no longer served her. But he was not a criminal. He was a fool. And in this family, we could work with fools. We had been doing it for generations. I turned from the window and looked at the empty conference room. 17 chairs. 3 empty folders. 2 coffee cups. Untouched. And cold. The ghost of a confrontation hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. Diana, I said quietly. She looked up from the lobby floor, phone in hand, eyes already reading my expression. Take me to the cemetery. I need to talk to Maggie. She nodded. She did not ask why. She never did. Diana drove. She always drove when it mattered. The black Mercedes moved north through Lincoln Park in silence, past the brownstones and bare elms, past the coffee shops where Maggie and I used to sit on Sunday mornings and argue about whether Frank Lloyd Wright was a genius or a narcissist. She always said both. She was always right. But we were not going to the cemetery yet. Diana turned east on Fullerton and pulled up in front of the Victorian house. My house. Maggie's house. The house where I had raised a son who was currently sitting on the floor of a lobby downtown, learning what it felt like to watch your life get folded into a federal file. He is inside, Diana said. She checked her phone. Chen's team brought him here 20 minutes ago. He asked to come here. Not to the motel. Not to a hotel. Here. I sat in the car for a long moment. The house looked the same as it always did. 3 stories of red brick and white trim. Iron railings. The garden level where Maggie had kept her studio. The oak tree in the front yard had dropped its last leaves weeks ago, and its bare branches reached across the facade like the fingers of an old hand trying to hold something together. I got out of the car. Diana stayed behind. She understood that what was about to happen in that house was between a father and his son, and no amount of legal strategy or financial architecture could help with it. Some rooms you have to walk into alone. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and the warmth hit me first. Someone had turned the heat up. The hallway smelled like coffee and dust and the faintest trace of Maggie's lavender, which had soaked into the wallpaper so deeply over 40 years that no amount of time would ever fully erase it. Ryan was sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where Vanessa had demanded the garden apartment on New Year's Eve. The same table where she had called Maggie's memory a dead woman's burden. He was holding a mug with both hands, staring into it like the coffee might offer him instructions on what to do next. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. His tie was gone. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were red but dry. He had finished crying. What remained was something worse than tears. Emptiness. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. The wood creaked under me the way it always did. Maggie used to say that chair was older than our marriage and twice as stubborn. I folded my hands on the table and waited. Ryan spoke first. His voice was hoarse, scraped raw. How long did you know? About the money or about the data? All of it. I considered lying. I considered softening the truth the way parents do when their children are small and the world is too sharp for them to touch directly. But Ryan was not a child. He was a 34-year-old man who had just watched his wife get arrested by federal agents, and he deserved the full weight of an honest answer. Diana found the financial discrepancies in early February. The offshore transfers. The Maserati. The shell accounts. The corporate espionage came later. Chen's forensic team traced the data breach in March. By April, Morrison's office had enough for a warrant. Ryan set the mug down. You had months. You could have told me. Would you have believed me? The question landed in the center of the table like a stone dropped into still water. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No, he whispered. I would not have believed you. I know, I said. That is why I did not tell you. Because the only person who could show you who Vanessa really was Vanessa herself. All I had to do was give her the room to perform. Ryan's jaw tightened. So this was all a show. The bathrobe, the messy house, the broken old man routine for the APS woman. You were acting the entire time. Yes. And Diana. The lawyers. Chen. Morrison. The fake documents Harrison fed to Vanessa. The Swiss bank statements that did not exist. All of it was choreographed. Yes. Ryan pushed back from the table. Not in anger. In something closer to exhaustion. Then who are you, Dad? Because the man I thought I knew, the retired architect on a pension who could barely manage his own grocery list, that man does not coordinate FBI investigations and run charitable foundations worth tens of millions of dollars. I looked at my son. I looked at the lines around his eyes that had not been there 2 years ago. I looked at the hands that used to reach for mine when we crossed the street. Small fingers wrapped around my thumb. trusting me to know which direction was safe. "I am exactly who I have always been," I said. "A man who built things, buildings, companies, systems. A man who loved your mother more than architecture and loved you more than everything else combined." The pension was real. The grocery list was real. But there were parts of my life I kept separate because your mother and I agreed, a long time ago, that wealth without purpose was just weight. We did not want you growing up under that weight. Ryan stared at me. "Mom knew? Your mother designed the Foundation's charter. She chose the name. Victoria and Margaret. My mother and her. She selected every scholarship recipient for the first 8 years. She visited every shelter we funded. She played cello at the dedication of the pediatric wing." I paused. "Your mother was not just aware, Ryan. She was the architect. I was just the contractor." Something shifted in Ryan's face. A crack in the emptiness. Not healing. Not forgiveness. Just the first fracture in the wall he had built between himself and the truth. He pressed his palms against his eyes and held them there. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up the mug he had been drinking from and carried it to the sink. I rinsed it, dried it, and set it on the rack the way Maggie had taught me. Small rituals. The architecture of ordinary life. "What do I do now?" Ryan asked. His voice was muffled behind his hands. I walked to the kitchen doorway and stopped. I did not turn around. I spoke to the hallway, to the lavender wallpaper, to the ghost of every conversation this house had ever held. "You start by telling the truth. To yourself first. Then to everyone you owe it to. You call Whitfield and partners, and you cooperate fully. You hire your own attorney, not Grady. Someone who works for you, and only you. You find a place to live that you pay for with money you earned. And you do not call me for 6 months. 6 months? 6 months. Not because I do not love you. Because I love you too much to let you rebuild on my foundation again. The next thing you build has to stand on its own. If it does, I will be here. This door will be open. The coffee will be hot. But you have to walk here on your own legs." I walked down the hallway toward the front door. Behind me, I heard the chair creak as Ryan put his head down on the kitchen table. I heard a sound that might have been a word, or might have been a breath, or might have been the beginning of something I was not yet allowed to witness. I opened the front door. The January air hit my face like a correction. Diana was leaning against the Mercedes, arms crossed, watching me with the expression she had worn since we were children. The expression that said, "I already know. Tell me anyway." "The cemetery," I said. She opened the car door. "I know. Rose Hill Cemetery sits on the north side of Chicago. 5,000 acres of limestone and silence. Maggie was not buried among the grand mausoleums. She had chosen her own spot years before the diagnosis. A small plot beneath a Japanese maple near the eastern fence, where the morning light arrived first and stayed longest. She said she wanted to be the first to see the sun. I told her she was being dramatic. She told me I was being an architect. Diana parked the Mercedes on the gravel path and stayed in the car. She rolled down the window an inch and said, "Take your time." Then she pulled out her phone and began answering emails, because Diana grieved the way she did everything else, efficiently, privately, on her own schedule. Maggie's headstone was simple. Gray granite. Her name, the dates, and one line she had chosen herself. She built rooms where love could breathe. It was from a poem she had written in college, decades before she became the quiet force behind a foundation that would feed thousands and shelter hundreds, and give music lessons to children who had never touched a piano. I stood in front of the stone and said nothing for a long time. The Japanese maple was bare, its branches making a pattern against the sky, like a charcoal drawing Maggie might have made. "Well," I said finally, "we did it." The wind moved through the cemetery. The world continued its indifferent rotation. Vanessa is in federal custody. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Identity theft. The things you warned me about the first time Ryan brought her to dinner. You said her smile did not reach her eyes. I said you were being protective. You said I was being blind. I paused. You were always right about people. I was only ever right about buildings. I placed the folded charge sheet from Miss Chen at the base of the headstone. A strange offering. But Maggie would have understood. She always preferred evidence over flowers. Ryan is alive. He is not in trouble with the law. He is broken. But broken is not the same as finished. I gave him 6 months. You would have given him 3. You were always tougher than me, Maggie. You just hit it better. I knelt and placed my hand on the granite. Cold and smooth, indifferent to the warmth of the hand that touches it. But I held it there, because rituals matter, even when they change nothing. I am going to sell the house. Not because I want to. Because it is not a home anymore. It has not been since the night you left on a stretcher and did not come back. It is a museum now. A beautiful, creaking, lavender-scented museum full of rooms where love used to breathe. And I cannot be its curator anymore. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. The Victorian house sold for $4.2 million to a young family from Evanston, a couple with 2 small children and a golden retriever, and the kind of hopeful ignorance that made me believe the house might become a home again. I kept 3 things. Maggie's restored wedding portrait, which a conservator in Wicker Park had spent 6 weeks reassembling from the shards Vanessa left on the floor. Maggie's cello, unplayed since her fingers last touched the strings, and the blue coffee mug with the chipped handle she refused to throw away because she said imperfect things deserve to be kept. Every dollar from the sale went into the foundation. Diana and I restructured the Victoria and Margaret Charitable Foundation into its next phase. The original endowment of $38 million, built over 20 years of quiet investment, grew to $50 million with the house sale and a matching contribution from Diana's personal trust. The press conference was held at the Chicago Cultural Center on a Wednesday afternoon in February. Diana stood at the podium. I stood behind her, slightly to the left. She announced the expansion, a new legal defense fund for elderly victims of financial abuse, named the Margaret Mercer Legal Protection Initiative, 12 additional music scholarships, a partnership with 3 Southside community centers, and a pilot program providing forensic accounting services to families who suspected elder exploitation but could not afford to prove it. A Tribune journalist asked why the foundation had operated anonymously for 2 decades. Diana smiled and said, "Because my sister-in-law believed that charity measured in press clippings was not charity. It was advertising." The room laughed. I did not. I looked at the banner. Victoria and Margaret. My mother's name, beside my wife's name. 2 women who taught me everything about strength and asked for nothing, except that I use it well. That evening, I moved into a furnished apartment on the 7th floor of a building in the West Loop. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a view of nothing in particular. I hung Maggie's portrait above the fireplace. I placed her cello in the corner. I set the blue mug on the kitchen counter. Then I sat in a chair that was not Maggie's chair, in a room that did not smell like lavender, in a building that held no memories, and I waited. Not for Ryan. Not for Diana. I waited for the silence to become familiar, because that is what grief eventually becomes. Not absence. Not pain. Just a new kind of quiet you learn to live inside. The way you learn to live inside any room. By placing one thing at a time on the shelf until the emptiness starts to feel like something you chose. Somewhere out there, my son was sitting in a room of his own, staring at his own walls, beginning the slow work of learning who he was without the woman who had taught him to forget. 6 months. I had given him 6 months. I picked up the blue mug, filled it with coffee, and began to count the days. 1 year. 365 days since Vanessa Cruz Mercer smashed my wife's wedding portrait on the hardwood floor of a house that no longer belonged to me. 365 days since I picked up a phone and said 4 words that changed everything. I was sitting in the West Loop apartment on a Sunday morning in late December, reading the Tribune with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The cello stood in the corner. Maggie's restored portrait hung above the fireplace, the hairline cracks visible only if you knew where to look. The blue mug with the chipped handle sat on the counter, waiting for its next purpose the way faithful objects do. The intercom buzzed at 9:12. I pressed the button. "Yes, Dad. It is Ryan." I pressed the buzzer without speaking. I walked to the kitchen, filled the blue mug with fresh coffee, then pulled a second mug from the cabinet. White. No chip. No history. I filled it, set both on the small table by the window, and sat down. The knock came 2 minutes later. Soft. Not desperate pounding or aggressive banging. A quiet knock from someone who was not sure he had earned the right to be on the other side of the door, but had come anyway. I opened it. Ryan stood in the hallway wearing a canvas jacket I had never seen, work boots with dried mud on the soles, and a face that looked like it had been taken apart and reassembled by someone still learning how the pieces fit. He was thinner. His hair was shorter. His hands were rough, in a way they had never been at Whitfield and Partners. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, son." He looked past me into the apartment. His eyes found Maggie's portrait immediately. He stared at the restored glass, at the woman in the white dress who had played cello at a hospital dedication and chosen scholarship, recipients from a kitchen table, and written a line of poetry now carved into granite on the north side of Chicago. "She looks beautiful," he said. "She always did." I stepped aside. Ryan sat at the table and picked up the white mug with both hands, the same way he had held the mug in the Victorian kitchen the day I told him to rebuild on his own. "I got a job," he said. "A real one. Not finance. Construction. A restoration company on the south side, specializing in old buildings, brownstones, Victorians, greystones. The foreman is a guy named Marcus who does not care about my last name or my resume. He cares whether I show up on time and whether I can read a blueprint." I looked at his rough hands, the calluses, the small cut across his left thumb that had healed unevenly, hands that had finally touched something real. "And Vanessa?" Ryan set the mug down. "Divorce finalized in September. She took a plea in August. 18 months federal. Reduced from the original charges in exchange for cooperation with the Linden Grove investigation. I have not spoken to her since the plea hearing." I nodded. "I did not say I told you so. I did not say she deserved it. Victory over your own child's worst mistake is not something a father celebrates. It is something he survives." "I found an apartment," Ryan continued. "Pilsen. 1 bedroom. 3rd floor walk-up. The radiator sounds like someone stepping on a cat every morning at 6. But the rent is mine. Every dollar. No cosigner. No safety net. No Mercer Holdings paying 1/3 of the market rate behind my back." We sat in silence. The kind that is not empty but full. Full of everything that had happened and everything that might still be possible if two people were willing to sit with their coffee and let the quiet do the work that words could not. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "Then tell me." "I am sorry. Not for Vanessa. I cannot apologize for someone else's choices. But for mine. For standing in that kitchen and telling you to let go. For choosing her word over yours. For believing that loyalty to a wife meant betrayal of a father." His voice cracked but held. "I was wrong. I have spent 12 months learning how wrong. Not from books. Not from therapy. Although I go every Tuesday. From the work. From the weight of a beam on my shoulder at 6 in the morning. From the sound of my own breathing when there is no one else in the apartment to fill the silence." I picked up the blue mug. The chip pressed against my thumb the way it always did. Maggie's mug. The imperfect thing she refused to throw away. "Your mother used to say that an apology without architecture is just noise. You have to build something behind it. A foundation. Walls. A roof. Something that keeps the rain out. I am trying. I know. That is why I buzzed you in. We finished our coffee. Ryan washed both mugs, dried them, and placed them on the rack, side by side. The blue one with the chip, and the white one without. Old damage beside new beginnings. He stood at the counter looking at them, and I wondered if he saw what I saw. 2 cups. 2 chances. 2 lives slowly, imperfectly being placed back on the shelf. Ryan left at 10:30. He shook my hand at the door, then pulled me into a hug that lasted exactly long enough for both of us to feel it, and not long enough for either of us to cry. Then he walked down the hallway and disappeared into the elevator. I closed the door and walked to the window. Below, Chicago moved through its Sunday routine. Joggers on the Riverwalk. Taxis. Heading north. The ordinary machinery of a city that did not know a 72-year-old man on the 7th floor had just shared coffee with his son for the first time in a year. I looked at Maggie's portrait. The morning light caught the restored glass, and for one moment, the cracks disappeared. She was whole again, smiling in a white dress, in a garden that no longer existed. He came back, Maggie. He came back. If you are still listening, if this story found you on a morning when your coffee has gone cold and the silence feels heavier than it should, I want you to know something. The people who love you are not always the ones who say it loudest. Sometimes they are the ones sitting quietly across from you, holding a chipped mug, waiting for you to find your way home. Like and subscribe if this story stayed with you. Tell me in the comments, where were you when you realized the people you trust most are the ones who tell you the hardest truth?